And I think what's so fascinating about medicine and Western culture, which is so medicine dependent, is it's really a dependency on bypassing the symptoms. And I think what we know from doing so much this somatic work, symptoms are ways the body communicates. They're not flaws or failures of the body. They're like really healthy responses to situations. So if we think of fatigue or we think of pain or we think of nausea, like all these things that come with being ill, that's the body trying to say, I'm not going to do this right now. That you can't make me. Like, I'm going to make this so unpleasant for you that you have to just sit still, sometimes to the point where you can't even eat. Welcome to the Holistic Life Navigation Podcast, where we explore life through the lens of somatics. I'm Luis Mujica, a somatic educator who teaches people how to find safety in themselves. Your turn to learn begins now. Okay, my friends, so we're back with another HLN team recording. I have a bunch of things I wrote down that I thought would be fun to discuss. And I thought we would just start with sickness because uh, I had a meeting with Marika before we all met, and she was saying she currently has COVID on the outskirts of having COVID. Um, but you said that this was interesting to have COVID while embodied. So let's just dive right into that and see where it takes us. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think I looked back on all the times I've been sick, which definitely COVID's different than like just the regular flu for me, but I really realized how much I was have always been bracing, especially like the minute I get sick. Um, there's also a lot of like, no, you're not. So like getting into reality was a little bit easier this time. Seeing that my COVID test was positive and it was like, oh no. Um, but I really felt like I just followed the body all week. And in a way that I normally can't, even in a way I normally cannot, because
Mhm.
um, usually there's like work and life and marriage and, like all these other things. But since we had the time off and it was a break, it was like, oh, all I have to do is just listen to like what my body needs and give it and give it.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it really was like there wasn't any point where I'm like, I should be doing X, like maybe taking meds and that type of thing, but there wasn't any fighting against what was reality,
Mhm.
and I thought that that was a really interesting sort of new way to approach sickness for me because of course I don't want to be sick. But in that instance, this last whole week of just being in bed, not even eating very much, it felt like I was fasting. Um, I could tell that my body was really liking it. I mean, just
Mhm.
rather than me fighting it, rather than me bracing against everything or feeling like this shouldn't be happening. We had to cancel all of our holiday plans, anniversary plans, like everything. And instead of just sort of being very sad about that or wishing that it was different, it was just like, this is what my body's going through. We can always reschedule things. I think what I get to give my body is the gift of rest, which that was what our break was about. I
Yeah.
didn't think of this is how I was going to get that rest,
Yeah.
but I feel
Well,
like yeah, I feel like I got better quicker because I was not fighting it.
when you said I didn't know that's how I was going to get the rest, we had this new full moon ceremony yesterday, and someone said, I forget who was, someone said in the ceremony, how did they put that, Camille? They were like, I don't know where support's going to come. Like I'm letting it come wherever it comes instead of thinking where it's supposed to come. And I've always loved that as a like a practice. And so this is that same practice. It's like, okay, I wanted to rest for 2 weeks. This is what happened to make sure I rested for 2 weeks. And I even love how you said your body liked it. Like you could feel your body liked being slow, eating less, relaxing, sleeping as much as you need. Like really you were called to just prioritize your body.
Yeah, and I also find that's when saying no is so much easier for me.
Hmm.
Obviously,
Hmm.
because I can't go out, I can't do stuff, I can't. But I was even in the process of trying, like, somebody was asking me if like if I could help them with, their website, and somebody asking, and I'm like, I guess I could. I'm on break. Yeah, nope.
Mhm.
Sorry,
That's
no.
right. That's right.
And
That's right.
I'm glad that I got that chance to choose myself. I'm glad I'm still alive because I was worried, for my kidneys. But um, yeah, I was surprised by how quickly isn't necessarily, it lasted a week, but um, how I just didn't have as much resistance in myself.
Well, instead of quickly, would the word be ease? Like it was more
Yeah,
easeful?
a little
Because what
bit
I'm
more.
feeling when you talk about it.
Right, because
Yeah.
really it's like I just get very Debbie Downer when I get sick, and so this
Yeah.
time it was like, oh, what can I actually do? Okay,
Hmm.
I watched a lot of Netflix. I slept so much. I ate, a lot of like a little bit of fruit, which
Hmm.
was just like a raspberry tasted like a milkshake.
Yeah. It
you
does. It
know?
does that. It does that.
Yeah, and I
I,
really loved having being able to reset naturally right before the new year felt kind of almost like a gift.
mhm. See, reset is exactly how I experience getting sick. Like I
Mhm.
was saying to you all, I love getting sick. And I don't seek it out. Like I don't like go out and try to get sick. But when I'm sick, I'm like, oh, I'm sick. And I just let myself lay down and prioritize the body. And it's like the organism of the body wants to survive so much that there's very little I have to do. It kind of does its own thing. I just sit back, I watch it, and like you said, you give it, what it's asking for. And I guess I think sickness is so special because it makes us so sensitive to our capacity. Like we really feel what feels good. We really feel what feels bad. Like you were even saying you were noticing your inability to even like something that you saw online, like to click the like button was too much for your body. That's really good information. I just love that.
No.
I'm laughing now because we when we came into this thing, I was like, okay, Marika and Evan, you need to insert yourselves because Camille and I will just take over because we have flight responses and we talk so much. And I see Camille like pursing her lips and smiling right now, like like pulling back, and Marika's doing it. She dove in, so I'm like, yes, here we go.
Like I did it, Evan, it's your turn, and we can
All right, all right.
and then we can all go home.
Oh, Evan before Camille. Now we're getting somewhere.
I'll dive in. I'll dive in. No, I mean we were talking about this a little bit before the call too, but just kind of mirroring what Marika was saying, that I also had, in a lot of ways, a similar experience when I had COVID, because um, not in the actual experience of it myself. Like I ended up having long COVID, so for about 6 months I had difficulty breathing, but more so in the change in the relationship that I had. Like for example, previous I had grown up with more severe asthma than I have now. And when I would start to have an asthma attack, I mean, I used to have to use a nebulizer at night, but throughout the day, I'd just use an inhaler. And instead of giving myself the chance to rest and recuperate after having an asthma attack, would just be like, oh, hit the inhaler and let's keep going, go back to class, or, keep shopping or whatever, whatever it was. Um, and when I got COVID, the inhaler just didn't work. So that was the first time I didn't actually have an option to bypass.
Hmm.
And if I did too much, if I worked too hard, or even just went up a flight of stairs too fast, I didn't have the option of bypassing anymore. It was like I have to sit down and catch my breath. And in the past, I'd always have such a strong internalized like, well, you have to keep going, even if no one said anything to me. And it was a really good opportunity to take that 6 months to really just tell myself and to tell other people like, sorry, this is all I can really do right now. Which, even though I'd had similar experiences with not feeling like I was physically able to do something, I really didn't have enough ability to. So it was a really good opportunity, I think, in some ways.
So that I'm hearing you saying, unable to bypass. And I think that's one of the gifts of sickness is you're unable to bypass, especially if you're sick in a way where you're unable to use certain medications that keep you going. Like I've known plenty of people that will like hit some kind of caffeine when they wake up and then take like a bunch of Robitussin when they go to bed. And it lets their body do what it needs to do to survive. So I'm not shading people, but it helps you bypass the symptoms. And I think what's so fascinating about medicine and Western culture, which is so medicine dependent, is it's really a dependency on bypassing the symptoms. And I think what we know from doing so much this somatic work symptoms are ways the body communicates. They're not flaws or failures of the body. They're like really healthy responses to situations. So if we think of fatigue or we think of pain or we think of nausea, like all these things that come with being ill, that's the body trying to say, I'm not going to do this right now. That you can't make me, like I'm going to make this so unpleasant for you that you have to just sit still, sometimes to the point where you can't even eat. And I just wonder what it's like how do we hold that relationship? I don't know what your relationships are with medicine, but how do you hold that relationship with medicine around bypassing a symptom and using it consciously? That's why I guess what I'm trying to say, like conscious use instead of, the dependency of bypassing a symptom.
Um, yeah, I laugh because I was that person who was just like Dayquil in the morning, NyQuil at night. Like, I was that person like, I can't get sick right now. And for me, there's been this transition between the mindset like I can't get sick right now, so I'm going to take this medicine because this sickness, this illness is an inconvenience, is unnecessary, versus now if I have the space and the time, I'll just let myself feel the illness as it is. Now, if there's something that I have to do, like if I have to take Khadijah somewhere, then yes, I will take some Dayquil consciously because I need to get her somewhere and I need to suppress those symptoms for a bit so I can provide or support her. But not just because that this sickness or this illness is an inconvenience. Because yeah, I've really gotten to the place where I love seasons of winter, whether it's the actual season of winter or it's being sick or it's being pregnant or postpartum or menstruating. Like all of these for me are signals to sit down. Um, Khadijah's almost 9 months old and I'm in a couple of mommy groups. And it's just been really interesting to see these women raise concerns about I'm not 100%. I'm not showing up the way I should. And I kind of wanted to say, friend, sit down. Your body expressed a human being. There's a lot of things going on that are seeking to repair and recuperate. And to Marika's point, I found like if you just sit down and be still, that recuperation takes place. It's actually, like you said, the body wants to survive, it wants to heal. And if we can give it space to do so, at least for me, I find it to be a really magical and I don't know why the word like hollow is coming up, but I mean, like in terms of my body feels hollow. Like when I fast, like that, it's
Mhm.
just like it feels like hollow and open and clear. And I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Makes a lot. I just started intermittent fasting again after years of not doing it
Mhm.
because my adrenals are in such good shape from the quiet diet that it's like, ooh, I'm gonna try some intermittent fasting, and I feel that, especially at night, that hollow feeling,
Yeah.
and in the first couple hours of the day, that hollow feeling, and it's such a good feeling. And I come from an eating disorder. I had some anorexia growing up, and then I binge ate, and I kind of would go between the two. And so in the past, like the hollow feeling was a different thing. But this time, that it's like the word for me is a clarity, and there's a stillness. Like it's actually not an adrenalized hollow. It's like this really embodied. Oh, my body doesn't have anything extra to do right now. And it feels restful, right? That's what I'm assuming it's like when you fast.
Yes, exactly. It's just this, it's not that urgency. It's not that I can't eat. It's that, oh, I have the opportunity to just let my body not have to process food. And also like during this, I'm not doing anything else. Like I'm sitting, I'm reflecting, I'm reading. And so,
Mhm.
like you said, yeah, it's just it feels really serene, that just the lack of urgency.
So that's what I was going to ask next. I wanted to go into this piece about urgency because everything we're talking about, even when you said I can't get sick, and like the Dayquil and the NyQuil, and this is all developed to meet a culture of urgency. And so I'm curious about our own internalized fear of slowness and what that means to us and how we hold that, how we celebrate it. I'm curious what that looks like because the inconvenience of sickness, besides the way it feels, is it slows you down. Like no one has a sickness that speeds them up. Maybe like hyperthyroidism, but most times if you have sickness of any kind or illness, or especially chronic illness, you're slowed down. And we have such an aversion to slowness. So I often wonder, even beyond wondering, when I think of when I had a nutrition practice, I would see people that had illnesses that they were told were lifelong and incurable. And their illness was just their body trying to say, sit down, slow down, stop, eat a little less, eat a little more, like depending on the situation. And when they started listening to that wisdom that was unfolding through the symptom, they started recovering and they were clear. They didn't have the markers anymore. The autoimmunities just completely dissolved, or greatly reduced. So it's like when I say I wonder, like I wonder if we slow down, would these things transform? I've seen them do so, but we have to transform our relationship to slowness and urgency. So I wonder where that comes in.
Yeah, for me, I think that some of the urgency is definitely, there's like for me there's like a fine line between the strong desire to do something or create something, or and urgency itself. And I think for me that kind of titrating into that is the only way that I can do that. Because yeah, I think at first it's definitely very difficult to determine what is urgency and what is coming from a feeling of this needs to get done, or versus, I really want to write a song, or, work on something creative, or I want to show up at some event, or whatever it might be. Um, Noticing which is there, where is it coming from? Like I would, yeah, just noticing if it's coming from a place of expansion. But as someone who constantly wants to be doing something, really trying to give myself to always at least stop and notice before I do something. And if it's not urgent, then kind of inviting like, well, maybe can I just not do something, or can I do something more passive instead of running off to do something? Can I just maybe sit and read for half an hour and give myself like a more passive resting experience?
I love that. I was just gonna say that the urgency for me, it's like the sickness. I don't do slowness the way the way that I do when I'm sick, like the slowness that I do when I'm sick, and like how everything slows down, and like I don't do that intentionally. It's always from something urgent, like illness, you know what I mean? Or when I'm planning slowness, it's more like I didn't add a bunch of stuff to my schedule. It's not like this though, where I really took like a whole week and I really just focused completely on myself. Um, it's more like fitting those things, fitting those 30-minute things in between, a big life. And I would rather intentionally slow down like I did this last week, you know, um, quarterly, monthly, something. I mean, it's just been so uh, I think reparative, you know. So it's just interesting to see the difference between like what I thought was being slow and being, intentional. It doesn't look anything like this last week, but I feel like this last week has helped me repair in a lot of different ways, not just the illness part. So yeah, and knowing that we'll have these breaks coming up this year, like how can I invent this without it being a sickness start, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
I know that I've experienced personally, and I think I see this in other people, that the urgency comes from, or can come from, well, I performed this, I've done this, or executed at this level today. I should be able to do that always. And if
That's
I
right.
can't, something's wrong. And so, I invoked winter earlier. So that idea of we should be able to summer all year long. And I think that has been individually and collectively part of the resistance to slowing down. But no, I've done this before. I know I can do this. So I should be able to do this always. Whereas I think, at least for me, the wisdom has come from knowing that the reason I'm able to perform at that level is because rather than performing at that level statically all the time, consistently and persistently, it's part of a cycle, it's part of a rhythm, it's part of an ebb and flow. So I can summer because I also take time to winter. I can execute, I can produce because I also take time to rest. And so moving back and forth between those for me has been a really conscious practice on a daily, weekly, and monthly and yearly cycle.
That's why I love somatic experiencing, because um, if you see it just as a modality to work with PTSD, you're cutting yourself off of a beautiful gift. As amazing as it is for that, it's incredible as a lifestyle, isn't it? Because when you learn pendulation, you realize, oh, this whole somatic experiencing, this whole somatic psychology, all it's doing is emulating cycles of nature, really, at the end of the day. Like, you're looking at nature and you see how nature hits a capacity and it pulls in. And people have shared this a video with me. It's this beautiful like time lapse of a flower. Someone mentioned it in membership too, right? This flower that opens and then it stops and closes slightly. And it opens a little bigger, it stops and closes slightly. It's pendulating, titrating in and out based on its capacity to eventually open up all the way and then die. And I think it's such an incredible teacher for our bodies, which are natural, which are animals, about what you just said. I can summer because I can winter. If I can pendulate between those two, for me at least, I lose the expectation of what my like progress or output should be. And I gain where is my body now, what is it needing right now. And when I give it what it's needing now, which sometimes is slowness for all of us, we're in winter right now, there's a slowness coming from the land. It gets darker, it's colder, so there's a contraction that occurs. There's so much that tells the body get really still and go inwards. And when we listen to that, then we have capacity to spring and summer. So it's also relational. And when Marika was talking and you said cycles, Camille, I wrote down lunar cycles when Marika was speaking, because it's when you live by lunar cycles, or you're inspired or you're in relationship to lunar cycles, you're in a constant daily shift. You're never in one place. You don't expect yourself to be in one place. But when we lose the moon, really for the man-made calendar, we get this idea, like even when you look at a calendar, it's a grid. And you get the kind of gridlocked idea that I should be performing a certain way, certain days of the week, certain hours of those days. But the lunar cycle is totally different. And I said I wasn't going to call on people, but this is relational, this part. So I'm curious, Camille, like, I know you have an intimate relationship as a Muslim to the moon and with
Yeah.
fasting. Like, what's that? How do you navigate that? What does that look like in your life?
Yeah. So for context, for those who don't know, so the Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar. So it starts with the new moon. And then a personal practice of mine is to also fast with the new moon as well as the full moon. And I've just constantly, or over the years, come into awareness that I relate really well to the moon. So particularly, I like acknowledging during the new moon, that's my time. That I'm going to go in. I'm going to probably not do a lot of work events. I'm not going to go to parties. And then I also know that during the full moon, I tend to be a bit more extroverted, or I have capacity, I have the energy to be a bit more extroverted, even though I'm fasting. It's just been interesting to watch how my body ebbs and flows throughout the lunar cycle. And that was one of the first things and the seasons, but really came into awareness of it when I started being consciously aware of how my body could follow the lunar cycle, that I could apply the same thing to even the weekly calendar. And I love how you brought that up. It appears as a grid. But one of the things that I really liked for my own cycles and rhythms is I've begun to think of the week as sort of like this mountain peak. If you think of a bell curve, so like Sunday is more of like a new moon-ish day for me, sort of lower. Monday I'm ramping up. Tuesday I'm ramping up. Wednesday I'm at my peak. Thursday I start to ramp down. Friday I'm almost back at new moon, and Saturday I'm back at new moon again. So for me, the week isn't just this straight linear thing. It's a bell curve. It's a mountain with a peak. And so whether it's on a daily basis, like I said, or the weekly basis, or the monthly basis with the moons, or the yearly basis with the seasons, just having awareness of those ebbs and flows, those cycles have just been I don't know, it just feels really settling. And I don't want to use the word innate, But once I came to awareness of it, it just made sense for me and my body, and it just felt like something that was connected to me through Islam or through my ancestors, or through whatever.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful because I love spirals. They're
Mhm.
so my teachers and my patterns.
Yes.
And it's exactly when I hear you talking about the ebb and flow of the week, like you're in this spiral of I go to a center place and a little place, then I spiral and get a little bigger, then I fan back in. And if you're living in that way, it's very hard to get burned out.
Yes.
Like you'll get tired, which is great, but you
Mhm.
won't get burnt out like to the bone the way you'll
No.
get if you're just ramped up and you're not like playing with
Yes,
that capacity, which you know very
absolutely. And I
well.
hit that wall. I hit
You
that
know
wall. It's not sustainable. It's
Mm-mm.
not. You will hit the wall and you will think something is wrong with you. Because why can't I be at full
Mm-mm.
moon or summer all the time? Why can't I be at 100% is the way we say it. And I really liked walking away from that term. Why am I not at 100%? Because I feel like I'm at 100% during my new moon. It's just 100% during
Agreed.
the moon. Or my
Yeah.
100% in January is going to be different than my 100% in July. And
Mm.
that's okay.
Hey, my friends. I created a space that is affordable, accessible, and anyone is allowed to join anytime, and it's called the Library Membership. The Library Membership is an online private platform that hosts dozens of my webinars, my somatic practices, private mini lectures, and movement practices. There's also a monthly sound healing, and you'll be invited to a weekly Tuesday live mini practice with me and other participants. You'll also be invited to be a live audience member in our monthly HLN Team podcast recordings, where you'll take place in the Q&A that happens off air after the episode is filmed. For more information on this membership, click on the link below or go to holisticlifenavigation.com and click on membership and then library. You can join right now and you can cancel or pause your subscription at any time. I look forward to seeing you in there. Yeah. As we're talking, a couple of things come up. What's really fun about having my own business and having technically employees, even though I don't really use that word very much. Employees, work family, employees right up there with journey.
Yeah.
My
You're an
employees,
entrepreneur.
my entrepreneur. Oh, you hate entrepreneur. Wait, what would you use instead of entrepreneur?
I don't know. A sole proprietor is
I thought you were gonna say something like spiritual. You said soul.
oh no.
Like a vision creator. Well, when I was thinking about like being an entrepreneur, being a sole proprietor, what's so fun about having employees is like I get to like make this whole new world and invite people into it. And one thing that I decided to do last year, but especially this year, was 8 weeks of paid vacation, which is like everyone listening is going to be like, fuck you, right?
Oh yeah.
And you can give it to us. We can handle it. Like, yes. But I'm saying that for two reasons. One, because I'm boasting, because I'm very happy that we're able to do that. And it makes me, it's exciting for people to know you can have a really successful business and people can still take lots of rest. Like you don't have to work your ass off all the
Yes.
time. And so that feels important to say out loud. So hopefully other people listening that own businesses can consider like, how can I create more space for myself and my employees? So I'm excited to see how our business keeps shifting as we go into the spirals of like 3 months of a lot of work and it peaks and it comes down. Then we just dissolve for 2 weeks and we come back out. But I'm also saying that because this podcast isn't an entrepreneur podcast. And I'm saying what I mean by that is a lot of coaching podcasts, it's mostly people that own their own businesses listening to it.
Mm.
The thousands of people listening to this episode have to go to a job that someone else makes the rules. And they might have like a 1 hour commute there and back. So it's 2 hours. And then they work an 8 hour day like I used to do. So you're talking like 10, 11, 12 hours sometimes. Monday through Friday is given to something that doesn't quite nourish you. I just want to include them here.
Mm.
Like, can we all think of a time, and I'm sure we can, where that was our life? How did we, or knowing what you know now, how could we incorporate this idea of spiraling, of the lunar calendar, of capacity, of not challenging urgency, but noticing urgency and letting rest come in. How can we do that when you're working that much for somebody else?
I mean, yes, I totally relate. Let's be real, 9 to 5 is actually 7 to 7, or at least it was in my experience.
Girl, say it loud. Say
Okay.
it loud. Me too.
Um, Looking back, there are things that I wish I had done earlier in my career, even when I was still working corporate, that I did start to do eventually. You know, hindsight's 2020. But I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, Malcolm, and I had gone back to work after my 3 month maternity leave, and maybe about 3 weeks or so into it, my manager at the time told me, yeah, I need you to take this trip to California, this week trip. And inside, I was just like, oh my God, you know, I'm nursing, but he's only 3 months. I guess she could kind of see it on my face because she says, oh, is anything wrong? I said, oh, you know, it's just Malcolm, he's still kind of young. And she looked at me and said, well, you know, you got to cut the cord sometimes. And I don't think she wasn't trying to be mean, but I wish I had said, no, I don't have the capacity for that. I am open to traveling maybe in another 3 months, but right now I'm going to stay close to home. I'm going to stay close to him. Um,
I just
but I
want to put a
didn't
pin in
do
that
that.
for a minute,
Yeah.
like how much we all internalize this urgency culture,
Mhm.
because it's like stereotypical, it's like male and patriarchal, but
Yep.
like that's a woman saying that to you.
Yes,
So I just think it's
exactly. Because she had
interesting.
internalized it.
That's what
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, that's I think
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
Yeah,
So go ahead. I
and
just
even
wanted to.
she was a mother as well, but yeah,
Mm,
exactly. She had internalized, and then I was sitting there internalizing myself. Like I
hmm.
bond. It was like, okay, yeah. And there
Yep.
was a part of me like, but if I don't, then it'll be the maternity or the mom backlash, and I gotta keep my career on track. I mean, all of these things. And looking back on it, I wish I would have just set the boundary, even to the extent of being clear enough to say, no, I'm not traveling. I'm not traveling for the next 3 months. And I totally understand that means we need to reassess either my position or relationship in this organization.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that. You know, as you're saying that, I think of again, people listening or our minds. When people talk about being free, our minds will immediately create a reason why we're not allowed to have that.
Yeah.
You know, so like when we say something like when you hear Marika say, I spent a week just being with my body, you know, having COVID, mind you, but a week being with my body. Some people will be like, must be nice. And
Mm-hmm.
when we hear that come up in our mind, like, well, you can, I can't. When we hear that, we want to get really curious and notice, okay, some part of me is afraid to be
Yeah.
that expansive. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that, because I worked insane amounts of hours in jobs for a long time with uh, practically no pay. And what I learned in those years, because I did what I did now, but you know, unpaid. And so I was still practicing these things, even though I wasn't teaching them. And what I learned from the practice is when I would get home from work, I would have this incredible opportunity to do what Marika did for a week. I would have this incredible opportunity to drop in and hold my body and be in the dark and listen to beautiful music or take a bath. And the only reason I had that opportunity is because I had to let these ideas dissolve of that I wasn't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Because what I did prior to that was come home and say, well, who am I if I don't do the dishes first?
Yes.
Or I need to get that laundry done. Or
Mhm.
I should really do something productive. Or I should
Yeah.
really go out tonight with somebody. I should watch this show. Like whatever the should, which is constricting. And I heard Evan say earlier, like noticing when he constricts or expands. When that should would come in, that was my signal that said, oh, that's my mind trying to convince my body that it's unsafe to rest.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this out loud as like somatic healing trauma work 101. When you are stuck in a flight response, which if you're working that much, you have to be to survive it. You're probably between freeze and flight. When you're stuck in a flight response, your body believes that stillness equals death because your ancestral animal, which would be running from a predator, would know if I stop running from this predator, it's going to eat me. If I'm in a war, if I'm fighting with another group of people, they catch up to me, they're going to kill me. So when we're in a flight response, sorry, my body believes that the slower I get, the closer the threat gets to me. Even when there's no actual threat to your life, that's what the animal body goes into. So I'm just saying that out loud. So when you're hearing us talking, even if you don't have the privilege of having lots of time off work or the privilege of creating your own schedule, just notice what we're really talking about is the animal body believes it's unsafe to slow down regardless of your working privileges. And I know that from working, just like you do, Camille, with entrepreneurs who work 80 hours a week, who work 7 days a week. Even though they have all the money, even though they have all the power to change their schedule, their animal body that they inhabited, just like anyone's in a flight response, believes that slowing down will kill them. So it's really about, how do I just titrate and start practicing finding safety and slowness? And for me, it was getting rid of devices. I didn't have a phone, I didn't have a TV, I had a computer, I didn't have the internet. And when I came home from work, there was nothing to come home to distract me. There was nothing to take me from my body. And I learned how to write poetry and take baths and listen to beautiful music and stare at the wall with a candle lit. And that was like so decadent. It was like going to a spa, even though I had to get up the next morning and do a 10-hour shift again. So I'm just bringing that in because I have the lived experience of burning out from working all the time and from finding the little fragments of moments of space that I can just totally take into after I lost like the shoulds. So I don't know if anyone wants to add to that or how you navigated that before. We're blessed with the schedule we have now, but what life was like before that.
Yeah, I'll just add that one of the things I noticed when I was working 12 hours a day is that some of that was the self-imposed, or it was self-imposed. It was a flight response, and that there was a part of me that was saying, well, if I just get caught up, then finally I can have a break and I can rest, or I have earned it, or I deserved it. And one thing that's been helpful for me to notice is like there's always going to be something to do. The reality is I'm never going to get caught up on everything. And so it's really been helpful for me to consciously be aware of what can wait. And again, sort of going back to that idea of urgency, that there's always going to be something that could take the place, even if I cross this thing off the list. And that has sort of given me, that conscious awareness has given me more capacity to go slow, to slow down, and to be comfortable, even if everything on my to-do list hasn't been crossed off by 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. that day.
Absolutely.
The thing that is different for me from old working me to now working me is the real difference is capacity and understanding what that is, understanding what it is for myself, knowing what those warning signs when I'm getting close to being over capacity or at capacity. Like, I was so well because I was very much in freeze and very much dissociated. Like I had no idea that we had capacity. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it made so much sense when it was finally explained to me, and I'm like, oh, that actually makes so much sense.
Mhm.
But it's so easy to push past it and push past boundaries when you don't actually know where your capacity ends or where it
Mhm.
is.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, now for me, it's when I'm getting a lot of charge and I'm getting overwhelmed and I'm getting feedback from my partner, like, oh, okay, there's something going on, you know. But before it was just like in my sort of old jobs, it was probably I just need to work more
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
harder, right? Or just put in a little bit more time because in my mind there would be this break at the end,
Hmm.
and there was never a break. So, it's just even with our work, like if we didn't have these built-in breaks, um, I would really have to consciously, intentionally figure out how to do that for myself. And I don't think I would give myself 8 weeks out of the year,
Hmm.
or I would, and then I'd be like, but I'm going to work for 4 of them. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, no, you would. You
I mean,
did
yeah,
last year.
because I have,
You
like,
need to stop
but
working,
it's
please.
but it also I had to expand my capacity to take breaks. Like over the last 3 years, like the first time we had 2 weeks off, I think I took 2 to 3 days for myself.
Yeah.
And then the next time I took like 4, and the next time 5, you know what I mean? So this last time, yes, I had COVID, but I was prepared to take at least 10 to 12 days, you
Hmm.
know. off. And I had scheduled some things like throughout the weeks, these last 2 weeks, so that I wasn't getting into a work pattern. It was like, oh, I have like this fun thing to do, this holiday thing,
Mhm.
a family thing, sort of trying to
You did good this time.
yeah,
All
like
of you did good this time. Like this is like the best this is the
I
best
was like, I
HLN
kept wondering
program.
if you had seen my email, because like I would look at my emails and be like, oh my God, it's over 300. But that means I'm not working.
I didn't look once because I was like, she's not working, I'm not working. There should be a bunch of emails piled up in there. My biggest trigger, everyone listening, is mess. Like one of my triggers in this lifetime that I'm still trying to work on uncoupling is
Virgo.
like stuff. Like it's not even mess, it's like the accumulation of stuff.
Yeah.
Like if I go into a store
Clutter.
and there's
Clutter. Yes.
clutter, that's the word.
Clutter.
When
Yes.
I go into one of those stores that has like tchotchkes, I'm
Mhm.
like, kill me now. Like right now. Right now. I'll take COVID again for 2 weeks.
That's hilarious. I'm like, take
Long
all that
COVID for 6 more
money.
months. Like I can't do it. And so when I go into an email, Marika, okay, everyone, I gotta hear the story. So we went to LA because we did this West Coast retreat, and Marika waited for like 3 years somehow to show me her phone. This one moment to show me her phone in LA of how many emails she had in her personal. How many emails was it?
20,000 probably.
So she had 20,000 emails in her private email. And I'm not trying to be like foul, it's just how it
Camille's
really felt.
face.
Oh,
My heart hurts. Like, so, oh my
you want some
gosh.
EFT? I'm safe. I'm home. I'm okay. So,
Ooh, I need to take a breath. Okay.
okay. So just like we said, I'm laying on this couch relaxing. Marika just does this. She just puts it right in my face. It felt like someone put an unwashed diaper under my nose. Like that's literally how, I'm not even kidding. That's the only thing I can imagine as a father with many diapers. I remember that feeling, that
He
smell.
screamed. He
I
literally screamed.
It was, I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of those fucking emails.
But
And
then
so,
it's like, how do you deal with this? Like at the end of the year, I just click read all, and then it goes back to zero. I'm
You
like,
don't delete
so, so,
I
but
don't have time for that. It takes a long time. I've tried before. I'm like, no,
I love that you just totally are you're not arguing with what is when it comes to these
no.
emails.
I
You're at
mean,
peace with those
I can
emails.
show you how many emails I have right now, but because I haven't erased it yet, I tried to go through and delete, but I only got like 6,000 deleted. So
But I didn't, my point is, I didn't look at your emails because if I looked at
no.
Marika's emails and there was a ton, or Evan's emails, and there's a bunch of emails, I'm like, can you please clean those up? Because like my Virgo gets activated.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I'm like, I'm not gonna look at them because there's supposed to be a lot of emails in there.
Yeah. Good
300.
job.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, you're like, I see that you have more than 35 emails. I think you should clean that out. I'm like, okay. I'm not gonna show you my personal
I'm
one.
not gonna show you that. But what you said about titrating is really important. Like I wanted to put a pin in two things you said. If I can't feel my body, so everyone listening, if you can't feel your body, you can't feel your capacity. It's
Mm.
impossible. Not gonna
Mhm.
happen. Capacity is biological, it's a sensation, it's a felt sense. When we talk about symptoms, we're really talking about capacity. When Evan says asthma, we're talking about the capacity for the lungs to take in air. You know, when I'm talking about nausea, the capacity for my stomach to experience anything going into it. So it enlivens us to our capacity, doesn't it? And when there's numbness or dissociation, which is inherent when you're stuck in a trauma response, you can't feel. And that's the catch 22 with trauma healing is you have to titrate that little bit of noticing, a little bit of self-witnessing, so you can start to feel what it even feels like to have a body. And then once you have that down, then you learn what capacity feels like, and then you can start listening to your body. So when people are like, I really want to learn how to listen to my body, and they take the course. And we're like, okay, we're going to teach you. And week one, they're like, I'm on fire. I can't sleep. We're like, that's what it's like to dive in and listen to your body. You have to go slow. And anyone who took the course could probably hears Camille in their nightmares and then in their dreams saying, notice, 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 titration, titration, titration. And
Mhm.
that's what she's talking about. The simple, seemingly like, uh, what's the word, meaningless uh, task of noticing is a really deep medicine because you start to learn where your capacity is. Then once you have that, it's like the world opens up to you because you can work your 12-hour shift and get home and actually realize what do I have capacity for right now?
Yep.
And if you have an hour or two waking hours left before you go to bed, that will change your life. To have 2 hours with your capacity intact will change how you live. So it's one thing I want to say. And I just, the titrating piece, like you took 2 days out of 2 weeks, 4 days out of 2 weeks, 8 days out of 2 weeks. That's what I meant a little while ago when I said people listening and the mind saying, I can't do that. It's the body's fear of expansion. Expansion is big and spacious and mysterious and vulnerable. So our minds love the idea of freedom. We love to talk about how free we want to be. But to actually experience it takes capacity to have all that space. So I just felt that was important to tack on there and bring in.
Mhm. And I'll just add on for those who've been listening over the course of last year. You know, Khadijah had several medical concerns last year. She was in the ICU for about 7 weeks after going into cardiac arrest. And I was still doing some HLN work during that time. And people would say, like, how are you doing that? Aren't you? I'm like, and the answer was because I was listening to my capacity. That is, I was doing the work that I had the capacity to do, and I wasn't doing the work that I didn't have the capacity to do. So it was this sort of it got to an unconscious point at some point where I was just, I don't know, it was somewhat effortless or easy to set boundaries to say, yeah, I can do that, or no, I can't do that. But it was just sort of wild to people that I was still doing some form of work while all of that is going on. And yes, there absolutely was a lot going on. But when you have that conscious awareness, that embodiment of what your capacity is, and knowing like when you're hitting that edge, and then being, oh no, that's not within capacity today, then you do have capacity potentially to do something else tomorrow. So just wanted to share that as well.
Well, I also like how Camille, and I've seen you do this, and I've seen Luis do this, and I have tried to practice it, where for one, when I learned about capacity, it was still in this really binary way, like I have it, I don't. And now, like I've seen both of you do this, where it's like, I think I'm gonna have capacity for that, and let's get there, and then I'll see. Like, and then I can make my decision from there. Like I always feel like I need to, for a long time, I felt like I have capacity for X and it's gonna stay that way. And it
Yeah.
was like, and now it's like when I feel like my yeses are with an asterisk, and
Yes.
like, yes, and let's just see how I'm feeling that day and
Yeah.
really pivot. And it's given so much more fluidity to like my relationships and the things that I do, because they know that I'm showing up and I really want to be doing these things. Or if I say I really don't have it today, I thought I was going to, but I don't feel bad about that anymore. I
Mhm.
think but it is something that I think has to be practiced. At least for me, it did, just because, it felt so, oh, I'm being wishy-washy, or
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yep.
or I can't be counted on, and
Yep.
it's actually, now I can really be counted on because I'm giving you like the real answer
The
in
real
real
me.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what my capacity is going to be like in 2 weeks.
That's important when you say wishy-washy. Like these are the terms we've all internalized and thrown at each other when someone's just listening to the truth. Like we have found a way to stigmatize people being honest because we don't like the answer. And so it's learn and I see that even like through an understanding, empathic lens. Like I understand if you're an employer and 10 of your employees call out one day because they don't have capacity, that doesn't work. Like and that's kind of the reality of society is the way we build it. It doesn't really work if you're fully listening to the body. You have to find these kind of like subcultural experiences, right? Like we're creating. Um, but I just think that was important. The way you said that, I appreciated that. And there's something else I want to say to that I'm losing right now. What was the first part you were mentioning? Do you remember?
Well, I was just talking about how it was sort of a binary thing.
That's the one. Yeah. You remember in August at the retreat we did in Menla, I had that breakthrough about no longer calling it building capacity, but calling it tending capacity.
Right.
And it's changed everything for me. And I've seen it change with the students and people that come to our workshops now. Because when we talk about building capacity, there's a binary that enters where you're like
Right.
leveling up and like, okay, I hit level 6. Now I'm always level 6, gotta get to level 7. Whereas tending to capacity, it invites the idea that I don't know where it is on any given day. I'm going to tend to it based on where it is. And that also means because if I don't have the capacity, let's say for this podcast, it doesn't mean that I don't do the podcast. So some people think, well, if I don't have capacity, then I just cancel everything sometimes. but not all the time. Sometimes you can do something with low capacity. And I can ask myself, well, how do I do this podcast when my capacity is at a 20 instead of 100? That's 10%
Right. Yeah.
capacity
Like
instead
I
of
like that
building it,
where,
right?
yes, I like that where if I know I have something I need all my capacity for that day, then I know that I need to cancel other things, or I know I need to like, push something else out. And I used to not like doing that because I felt like I was prioritizing things over other things in a, I don't know, a negative way, but
Hmm.
that's just knowing what I want to prioritize,
Hmm. Yeah.
and having the capacity for those things. So,
Now we're recording this on January 1st. I don't do resolutions, but Marika want to talk about all the resolutions we're not doing. So I'll start by saying I'm not doing any of them. I don't do them. Uh, why don't we all share like what resolutions have you tried to do in the past? You're like, I'm not going to
I'm gonna lose 30 pounds.
do. Throw it out.
I'm definitely not gonna quit coffee.
Has that been a resolution of yours?
I don't even know if it's ever made it to the resolution. It's been a thought that's entered my head, and then cutting down that's different. So maybe
Oh
maybe
God.
that can even be where we can take this as
Can we
a
tell the public?
as a resolution, huh?
Can we tell the public?
Can we tell the public?
You have
I've already
50,
cut down.
he's 50% decreased his coffee consumption, which I
It wasn't.
never thought would happen.
It wasn't
And
even on purpose.
it was by accident.
Yeah, I shared too much of my coffee. And then really, I'm really, yeah, I've always gone through fluctuations with my coffee consumption, and I think it's also kind of, um, it's a good marker of if I'm not noticing my capacity, the number of cups of coffee I'm having is alerting me to where my capacity's at.
Yes.
So it's nice to be able to kind of balance that out and then see where I land.
How about you, Marika? What's one you're just not going to do this year?
I will not be giving up sugar. Thank you. I did that one year, and I'm surprised I didn't like murder everybody around
The
me.
whole year?
What you did
No,
the
not the.
year?
It was
I
like
was gonna say,
the
damn,
first. No, I did like it was like like 3 months or something
Oh
like that. And
wow.
it
it's a
was
good
the worst
run.
3 months of everybody's life. So, no, we're not
Including yours, or was it worse for them?
probably for everybody
You
around
made
me.
it worse for them. You
Yeah,
made it
I mean,
worse for
as
them.
long as I'm making it worse for people around me, then I feel
So
better.
you settled yourself. You found safety in their misery.
Right, kind of. Yeah, they're like, "What's going on with you?" I'm like, "No sugar." But yeah, no, I'm not. But I also have not been, because of this last week, I'm like the cleanest I've ever been.
Totally.
Like no caffeine, no dairy, no sugar, no booze, no nothing.
Just like beans and fruit you've been eating, right?
Yeah, yeah, or lentils, just
Yeah.
water. And
Yeah.
like I remember the first day, I'm like, water is a meal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
That's
first
how it
two
was
days,
for
like
me.
that's it, just water.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I feel
Totally.
so clean.
Nice. So you can kind of start from there, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, I was like, well, I guess we're jump starting the new year without even thinking about it. So that's kind
Yeah.
of
Well, we're gonna play tonight in the membership. So many people tend to do New Year's cleanses. Again, when I was a nutritionist, oh my goodness, my voicemail will be flooded the first week of January because everyone wanted to work with a nutritionist to like detox. And I was trained in a kind of detoxification that's called like a nourishing cleanse, which is really rare. Most cleanses are all about purging or reducing or kind of like scouring the body. And a nourishing cleanse is about feeding the body only nourishing food. So it's essentially like if you think of our foods that we teach people in week 2 of the course, the whole foods that are balancers. You're mostly just doing balancing foods, but there's no portion control. You can eat as much as you want, as little as you want. You really follow your body, but you just bring in the nourishing foods. And there's this oh, what's it called? I think it's the Gerson Institute. Yeah, it's the Gerson Institute. They're really well known for just completely dissolving people of almost every kind of cancer you can imagine. Like they have a really high success rate. They were outlawed by the United States government, no surprise, and had to move across the border to Mexico to practice, which they continue doing. But one way they became so successful is through nourishing detoxes. They would nourish people so deeply that their cells simply couldn't take in disease because it'd be filled with so much nourishing calories instead of empty calories. So I'm gonna teach our members tonight how to do like a nourishing cleanse. I think it's gonna be really fun because it's a more settled way. It's not so like stimulating and adrenalizing and heightening for 28 days and you crash and you go back to everything you did before. It's like a really gentle way to hold that down. Um, and yeah, does anyone have anything to say before we transition? No?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, well, now's that time where we get to hang out with our live audience here. So if anyone wants to be part of that, we do it every month when we do these HLN Team podcasts. And you can do so by clicking the link in the episode details for the library membership. It's been lovely to be with all of you. Take good care. That's the end of today's episode. Now let's take a moment to notice where we feel the episode in our bodies. Close your eyes. Take a breath. And let whatever wants to come up, come up. And remember, those sensations hold the wisdom that we're looking for. If you want to go deeper, visit holisticlifenavigation.com.